Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for another CIQ webinar. My name is Zane Hamilton. I'm the Vice President of Solutions Engineering here at CIQ. At CIQ, we're focused on powering the next generation of software infrastructure, leveraging the capabilities of cloud, hyperscale, and HPC. From research to the enterprise, our customers rely on us for the ultimate Rocky Linux, Werewolf, and Apptainer support escalation. We provide deep development capabilities and solutions, all delivered in the collaborative spirit of open source. This week, we're going to be talking more about Apptainer, kind of continuing that Apptainer discussion and containerization that we've been talking about over the last several months. But this time, it's going to be a little bit different because there's some new exciting things that are taking place in the community. And we're going to talk about power to the users, the unprivileged operations in Apptainer. We can go ahead and bring in our panel. Hello, everyone. It's good to see everybody again. I'll go around and do a quick round of introductions. Forrest, you're up first because you're right next to me today.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, hold on.
I may skip you. I'm going to go straight to Brian.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
There you go. You can.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Good morning, all. Great to be on the webinar. My name is Forrest Burt. I'm an HPC systems engineer here at CIQ. And yeah, very happy to be on the webinar and excited to see the presentation that we have here today.
Thank you, Forrest. Brian.
Hi, everyone. Brian Fenn here. I'm a solutions architect here at CIQ. My background's in HPC administration and architecture, and I have some workflow expertise in the areas of CFD and genomics. Great to be back on the webinar.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Dave, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hello. I'm not a CIQ person. So I work at Fermilab, Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory.
But you are involved with Singularity Apptainer, and I think it's important to tell people how.
Right. Yeah, I'm on the technical steering committee, and I also did a lot of the development of the new features that we're going to be talking about today.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Dave. And our other Dave, we always have like multiple Daves, and as you know, if you've watched any of these in the past, so we're going to the last Dave here. Dr. Godlove.
Yeah, I'm Dave Godlove. I am a solutions architect here at CIQ, or at CIQ. CIQ is not here, but I am a solutions architect at CIQ. And I've got a long history with Singularity Apptainer as well. And I'm also really happy to be demoing some of the features that primarily Dr. Dave next to me has worked really hard and championed and developed.
Thank you. So I'm going to start off with you, Mr. Godlove. Go ahead and go back for those of you who are maybe new coming into Singularity Apptainer, but let's talk about how Apptainer has really been giving users more power to do things over the past 7 years.
Cool. Yeah, this is a topic that I really, really like talking about because it's something that I've been personally involved in quite a bit. And it's really kind of the legacy of Singularity and Apptainer as a project. So I would say that Apptainer really was started with the idea of giving more power to users. If you think about just the technology itself, the technology allows a user on a high performance computing system basically to install anything they want. Thank you, Rose. Basically to install anything they want on an HPC system, basically to install it in a container and then grab it and pull it over to the HPC system and run anything they want. And this is great because, you know, not only can they just install anything they want, I mean, I guess maybe they would have been able to do so anyway, but it allows you to install things using tools like Yum and DNF and apt-get and just, you know, package managers. A lot of times when there's new scientific software that you want to run, it'll be hosted on GitHub or something. You'll go to GitHub and there will be some instructions for installing it. And the first instructions will be install all these dependencies. And it'll have a list of apt-get or Yum commands, assuming that you're on some, you know, particular distribution. And then it'll say, and then, you know, I don't know, pip install after you install all these dependencies, this software or something like that. And you'd be like, oh, well, that's great, but I can't do any of that because I'm not a system administrator in my HPC environment. And so, you know, it used to be that you would have to contact then a system administrator and say, do we have any of these dependencies? How can I talk to you about maybe trying to install them in a non-standard location? And, you know, now you just say, oh, I'll just spin up a container, and it doesn't matter that we're running rel on the cluster. I'll just spin up an Ubuntu container and do all this apt-get stuff that you want me to do, install all these dependencies, you know, pull in the program, drag it over to the system, and boom, I'm done. So it's all about giving users power and, you know, handing them the ability to do stuff. And, you know, I'll talk a little bit more too. I'll try to, you know, I know I'm excited about this, so I'm going to talk a bunch, but I'll try to cut it short. But I will say that there's been lots of times in Apptainer's development too, where the developers have gotten together and said, we could let users do this, but we're not sure if we want to, because users might end up shooting themselves in the foot. And those discussions almost invariably have come down to, let's go ahead and give the users the power to do whatever feature it is that we're thinking about letting them do. Let's go ahead and trust the users, and let's go ahead and you know, give them the ability to do whatever. And this extends to the ability, I'm going to call it, to be weird, to do things that are not necessarily best practices or what we expect or how we think users are going to use the software, but actually to get into the internals, into the guts of the container, and change things in there, and to do things that, you know, to allow their containers to work, even if they're not things that we necessarily expected users to do. So this is really what Apptainer's always been about, is giving more power to users, I think.
It's great. I know, Forrest, Brian, you guys have come from outside environments where maybe you were using other containerized platforms. How has this given you guys a little bit more power, or the ability to do things that you couldn't do with the other systems, or other platforms, I should say? Forrest, let's start with you. You came off mute first. You win.
As far as containers go, my background has primarily been mostly with the Singularity Apptainer project. When I was working at my previous position as a system administrator in the academic sphere of HPC, I needed a solution that allowed me to install software in kind of a more flexible way and in kind of a more standardized way. And so I turned to kind of looking into containers as a solution for that. And I found out that some of the other containerization solutions out there were unsuitable for HPC. And so Singularity, at the point at which I started using it, was basically the de facto standard. So while I've kind of tinkered with other solutions around, my background was primarily with Singularity Apptainer, because I've mostly been in HPC dealing with HPC-focused containerization problems.
Thank you, Forrest. Brian.
So Apptainer has enabled me to deliver software solution. In a previous role, it enabled me to deliver software solutions very quickly to a customer. So we had this inbound customer who needed to get a workflow running urgently. And usually we would have to wait for the entire release cycle before we deploy our updates. But since they needed it really urgently, I was able to use Apptainer to quickly whip up a container for them, and they got their machine learning workflow running the next day. And they met their deadline, and they were super happy with the solution I was able to deliver them.
Great, thank you. Dr. Dave, I know you've been, Fermi now, you've been around labs for a while, and you've seen a lot of different things take place over time and kind of moving towards that containerization. What does this allow you to do?
I'm the support person for the high energy physics community, and we do some HPC, but we also do what we call high throughput computing, where we run on, instead of big computers, just lots and lots of them, hundreds of thousands of computers all over. Our community got involved in using Singularity early on because we wanted to be able to we start jobs at all the sites first from the experiment that's running. They first submit a job in just to allocate a space first, and then it goes and runs the user's computer, so user's code. And so we wanted to be able to start as one unprivileged user, start a container from another unprivileged user, and to keep them isolated from each other. They could even on the same machine be running from different users. So we were very interested in the isolation features, and we were very much interested in unprivileged, and that's we've been using unprivileged for quite a few years, because our code's distribution is not through CIF files. We have the CernVM file system to distribute already unpacked, and we could use the unprivileged features earlier as they were available in Singularity. It didn't need the mounting of unprivileged CIF files. So that's kind of my background.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. So we talk about unprivileged users. I know that's something we really want to talk about, but I think there's been a lot that has come out in the last at least 2 releases that have really been driving towards what's going on now within the Apptainer community. But let's talk about what that means and where we're adding features and what those are. And I'll leave that open to anybody who wants to take it. I know both Daves probably have a lot to say on this topic. So, Mr. Godlove, I'll let you go first.
Well, yeah, maybe it'll be good to recapitulate some of the history and some of the need for privilege and so on, just to kind of level set a little bit to answer this question and to get everybody. So, for a very long time now, Apptainer has required some elevated privilege to run, and because of that, so if you're not, I don't know, we might have viewers who are not like super up to speed with everything Linux based. So the way in which that works is that an administrator will install Apptainer, and that will have what's called a set UID bit installed with it. It used to be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like a really long time ago, the entire executable had a set UID bit. And what that means is it sets the user identification to somebody else. And so when you have a binary which is owned by somebody else, you can run as that user, even if you're not that user. And that becomes handy because you can own the binary by root, and then you can allow an unprivileged user to run it, and they run as though they were root. Well, I think a very, very long time ago, I could be wrong, but I think that the entire binary was set UID. Pretty quickly into that development, we changed that. So there was one binary which was set UID, and then Apptainer would go through and elevate privileges only for things that needed to be elevated during the startup of the container. And so, what do you need elevated privileges for? Well, for instance, you need to mount a file system to your file system, and that's usually a privileged operation, right? So you can't really just do that on your own, and we can't just give everybody who we want to use Apptainer root privileges. So we allow, in that one specific circumstance, very carefully, we elevate privileges just long enough to mount the file system, and then we drop privileges. Okay, so set UID bits, bit binaries are notoriously difficult to write properly. We've always had very, very smart people working on the Singularity Apptainer project, and we've had very security-minded people working on it. And so because of that, we've been very careful, and we've had a pretty good track record as far as making sure, not a perfect track record, but a pretty good track record as far as making sure that we don't have vulnerabilities in this system. But the fact remains, it's a really difficult system to administer. So along come user namespaces in the Linux kernel several years ago. User namespaces within Linux have actually been around for a while. What the user namespace allows you to do is the kernel allows you to enter a new kind of walled off area, a new namespace, and it maps your UID on the host system to a different UID inside that namespace. So we can use that to map whatever UID you are to 0 inside the user namespace. And that gives you the ability to have privilege inside that namespace, even though you're not privileged on the host system. So several years ago, we started to play around with using this to give you the ability to be root inside the container. And then the user namespace started to become adopted more and more. It started to become more standard in Linux kernels to the point where now it comes standard and it's on by default. And so now it's quite easy to use that to be root inside the container. This also allows you to be able to build things inside the container that would normally require root privileges. And then I think the kind of the clincher that now allows us to be able to do everything that we want to do, even to be able to mount. And then, Dave, you can jump in and kind of correct me if I get this wrong. But there's now new technology using Fuse, which is an unprivileged implementation of, it's kind of like a general implementation of lots of different file systems. But using Fuse, there's a squash Fuse now file system, which allows an unprivileged user to take a squash FS file system and mount that onto your file system. And that's cool because guess what? Apptainer containers are saved as squash FS files. So now we can leverage that technology to mount the file system to your file system unprivileged. And that pretty much removes for like 95% of the operations that you would normally want to carry out with Apptainer. That pretty much removes any need to have elevated privileges. And so that's, where we came from to where we're at today.
Yeah, I'll add that's the most important thing. But there was also, at the same time, we added the ability to mount Fuse 2FS ext3 ext234 file systems, which is used for overlays. Sometimes we use those for overlays when we want to make it appear writable, and then also Fuse overlay FS when we want to have different layers. It will use that. That is, or it will use. There's even the newer kernels. You can actually run the kernel overlay FS unprivileged inside a user namespace. So that's an even more recent feature than the mounting of Fuse. So those things, and then of course also the unprivileged build features with fake root that were added in this release, which you were probably going to talk some more about.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that, David. I mean, if you want to continue talking about that and tell us why that is important, how does that help a user, an end user?
Okay, yeah. So Dave did mention that we could do some building even before the recent Apptainer releases. It was possible to do building. I'll first back up a little bit. So when you're building a new container from scratch using like a definition file, you're doing these, privileged operations of apt-get or yum. And so it requires it to appear privileged inside. And it not only that, it really normally wants to have multiple user IDs. There's root files, but it also has other things like bin or other per package user IDs. So it wants to have multiple user IDs. And the unprivileged user namespaces by itself, the totally unprivileged, really only gives you one user ID you're allowed to map. And but we have had for quite some time this -- fake root option in Singularity and Apptainer, and that would allow you to do a build as fake root, but it's not still. It still requires system administrator intervention because it requires setting up this mapping. It's not a totally unprivileged operation. It requires setting up system administrator to set up something called /etc sub UID and sub GID to say which user IDs you are allowed to map into in your namespace, and that actually uses a privilege escalation program to help with you, the new UID map and new GID map. And that's what Podman and other rootless container systems are using. So Singularity had support for that. You had to add the option when you did the build to say -- fake root, and you also had to make sure the system administrator set it up. So what's new in Apptainer 1.1 is that if those are not set up, if those are set up, it'll just use it by default. You don't even have to say -- fake root when you do a build. But if it's not set up, it instead runs a fake root command. This is different from the fake root option. It's a fake root command, which makes it appear as if you have multiple user IDs, but you really don't. It traps the system calls, and so if something tries to do a chown to another user ID, it says, okay, I changed it, even though it really didn't on the host, and it also keeps track in memory which files it has changed. If you later ask and say, is this file owned by, who's this file owned by? It remembers that other user ID. So through that, we're able to do builds as well, even without any system administrator set up at all. And so this can be very useful, especially on HPC systems. People need to want to use the locally optimized for that HPC system to be able to access, to be able to compile right on that system is a really big help.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. And then, Mr. Godlove, I know earlier in the week we were on a call and you started talking about the ability to install Apptainer without having to have root, and that was news to me. So I think that's very cool. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that is one of the new things that that Dr. Dave over here has introduced. So yeah, I'd actually just like, if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to just show that to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, how do I stop cam mute settings? I'd like to share my screen. Okay, and I'm going to share. It helps if I speak while I do it. Window.
Conscious train of thought.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not seeing the window that I want to share. Should have tried to do this before. All right, let me
It's a live demo. That's what happens.
yeah. All right, let's see here. Maybe we could talk a little bit about something else while I try to figure out why that's not working.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about what the script does. So what the script does, so it actually installs the program itself without having to compile it from source. You could always compile it from source, but this takes existing binaries that a system administrator would install, but instead of requiring a system administrator to install it and use like yum to install it, it just reads the packages from the servers where they come from and unpacks all the files into your own local directory wherever you want them. And also Apptainer has been updated to be able to run that way, to be able to detect where it's running from and then relocate itself that way wherever it is, as long as it's not an setuid installation. It will then it's not allowed, because that can be dangerous. So that's setuid installation. But if the setuid starter isn't there, then it will just use them.
So Dave, is this kind of like Python virtual environments where you at some point, as Apptainer moves on, you could actually have a user have a specific version they want to be running and have multiple users on a system using different versions installed kind of locally for them?
Well, they certainly can do that. I'm not sure exactly how Python virtual environments work, but yes, they can. You can install however many different versions you want in your own directory there. Something else is being shared.
Nope,
no,
not yet.
We're not seeing anything being shared yet, Dave.
There we go.
Or something coming up.
Floating.
It looks like it's just a gray screen. So I was asking, yeah, we're having a little technical difficulty right now. Might be because I have got multiple screens running. So let me see if I can fix that.
Sure. So ask Brian and Forrest, have you guys had a chance to play with this yet from an unprivileged perspective?
I haven't had a chance to play directly with the features that Dave is going to demo, but I've definitely been enjoying just being able to type Apptainer build, star.sif, star.def, and having it, build without fakeroot or anything like that. I've definitely been taking advantage of that type of capability.
I have not been able to play with these features yet, but I am really looking forward to Dave's demo.
If you can get it to work.
Me too. If not, we're gonna have him read it line by line as he goes. Maybe.
I'm really sorry, guys. I
right.
I have the options either to share windows and it's not showing me the window that I want to share, or I have the options to share screens and it's just showing me black screens. So having a hard time trying to figure this out. I apologize. Let me continue to work on it.
Can you drop out and come back, Dave? You can do that too. So, I mean, while we're waiting, Dr. Dave, what other things are you now currently working on in Apptainer for, like, what's coming?
Yeah, the main thing that we're still trying to do is to also support encrypted file systems, unprivileged. That's the one significant feature that still requires setuid root. We didn't get around to that yet. So we're trying to work with a existing Fuse file system that does encryption, and we're getting another someone else to work on that. I'm just consulting with them on that. So that's the other main thing that's still missing without setuid. Yeah, with the current release of Unprivileged.
Very nice. So I guess one of the other questions I've got for you, Dave, since we have some time, Apptainer now being in the Linux Foundation, have you found more people to help to test the right code? How has that been going?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's still been an issue that we need. Could certainly use some more development help. So the Linux Foundation doesn't really bring development resources. They bring legal help, really, to help you do things and advice and keeping things open and that type of thing. But yeah, could use some more help. I believe we do have some more people now recently been starting to step up to do some more volunteer for some more pieces. So that's good.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, I guess if we could go ahead and post kind of the links to those communities along with this, so we can kind of advertise and start asking for some help. Are there specific areas that you need help in? I mean, testing is always going to be one that seems to be a place where people could contribute, but what else do you need?
No, I mean, it's really, what people, whatever features that people find important, I think that they would be interested in is they're certainly, this was the Unprivileged was my big thing, and that's why I did a big push. I've spent, used a lot of the time paid by my employer because I felt that this was a really important feature, and so I don't expect to be being quite so active anymore because I do have like 4 other jobs I'm also trying to do. So,
of course.
Yeah. So whatever people feel is important for their use cases, that please jump in and help.
So kind of going back and looking at somebody's got a question. Good. Is there anything that does not work with an unprivileged installation?
Yeah, and that's the decrypting of the file systems. That's the one that ROST does require. There are a few other minor things that were hardly ever used. Things like going with different user ID inside. I think even that might be available soon. I forgot how that ended up, but mostly it's the decrypting of file systems on the fly.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sylvie.
There is it's a slight difference in the if you start up a CIF file and you look in /ls// you'll see a different set of user IDs. So that's a different. So when Apptainer runs with SUID mode, setuid mode, then you see all the user IDs get mapped. They get mapped straight through. So you would see something owned by root, whereas actually when you're running in unprivileged mode, it's owned by you. And the files that were owned by root look like they're owned by you inside and a lot of other files are just owned by nobody because you have two IDs. There's you and there's nobody. That's what you get with the unprivileged user namespaces. Unless you're using fake root. If you're using fake root, then you get them all again. But so that's a difference. But in general, it doesn't make much difference. Sometimes programs are very picky, and then it does make a difference. But so that's another thing. But so in general, you hardly ever notice that.
Thank you.
Any
Dave,
better luck?
how's it going?
Still not great. I'm going to try to move everything to my first screen and then just share the entire screen and see if I can do that.
Okay. So one of the other questions that I have that maybe people are wondering about, if you're used to some of the other container platforms, I know we've talked about Podman being able to run rootless to some degree. Why is that important especially for systems administrators and really for HPC? Why is it important to not have to have root, other than you don't have to go get somebody to install something? But why else is that an important thing?
Right. So basically we're talking about security considerations here. I noticed that was in the abstract about today's talk. We haven't got to it yet. So I'll talk about that while Dave is busy. So as Dave said, well, he did already talk about saying that, set UID root is notoriously difficult to secure. So we've tried to do a good job of it. There is, in fact, one known serious risk that's always been in the case with Singularity, set UID, Apptainer set UID mode, and that is that allowing the user write access to the container. So which is basically a file system, right? It's a file system inside it. This gets mounted directly in the kernel the kernel developers have said this is a risk because allowing users write access to the underlying bits while the kernel is interpreting it is a risk that the kernel is not designed to protect against that case. So let's say the user is twiddling with those bits, and then right in the middle at the same time, the kernel is interpreting them. And the kernel, they said the kernel file system drivers are not designed to support that. And so it's always been a risk. No one has published a known attack using this, but it's always been a risk that we've lived with, and because it's been so convenient to use. And so when you run with unprivileged and the file systems are not running in the kernel at all, it's a fused file system. So this is the reason why the kernel owners have only allowed fused file systems. They won't inside this unprivileged user namespace, because they're worried that any other file system that you allow to be mounted inside this unprivileged user namespace, where the user is running as a pseudo root, that while they have, to allow them to mount other file systems while they have access to the underlying bits is too much of a risk. They don't allow it. That's why they only allow a fuse. So that's the risks that known risks that we've been living with all these years with Singularity and Apptainer set UID. So on the other hand, there is trade-offs, because when you are using unprivileged user namespaces, that exposes the system administrator to any time the kernel comes out with a CVE something that might be exploited through unprivileged user namespaces. That means they need to upgrade their kernel and reboot, and that can often be a big pain for system administrators. It can also be, you say, oh, it's a risk that maybe some of these things are running undiscovered. Maybe people with a lot of resources have discovered these other holes, and they haven't given it out to the kernel developers. So there is that disadvantage. Now, what we have put in our advice is that turns out that almost every CVE for the last couple of years related to being exploitable with unprivileged user namespaces have been in combination with network namespaces, because it exposes, I guess, another big piece of the kernel code, the network handling. And so we recommend turning off network namespaces if you can live with it. So that means if you don't mind sharing the host network with all the containers, which is what Apptainer does by default, It's not what Docker and Podman do by default. They by default give you a separate network namespace. You can give an option to it to say use the host networking. It's also there are also some systemd, few systemd services, just a couple in EL7 and more in EL8. Do use network namespaces by default, but we give instructions on how to turn those off so that these services aren't using a network namespace. If you want to do that, but that is the way that we in the high energy physics community, we've been for a couple of years have been running Singularity Unprivileged, not using CIF files, so we didn't need squash views, and we've been telling people, enable your unprivileged. Well, Dave mentioned that it's enabled by default, but that's also in EL8 and later, and also in I think most of Debian it is enabled by default, but it's not in EL7 yet. So what we say, those on EL7, enable your user namespaces, and everybody disable network namespaces if you can. And that way you're going to be exposed to a lot fewer risks in the kernel. So
thank you for that, Dave. And we do have some questions coming in, actually. So if we can throw up Lev's question first. I see. Back in November, I tried to reallocate an unpacked Apptainer RPM for some operations. It still looks for a hard-coded central path.
114 changed that. So if you were, and that was, I think, since November. No, I think you can look it up, but you probably weren't yet using 114. So at the same time, we enabled the install unprivileged.sh script. It had more relocatability. If it's still any hard-coded paths, please make a GitHub issue and we'll look at it.
Great. Thank you. That now from Peter. Is there a problem using shared file systems like Lustre with rootless Podman? I guess there is an issue with Podman. It's the same thing true in Apptainer.
Well, not with the CIF files. See, that's the difference. If you try to use sandbox mode on Lustre, you'll have the same issue. And Podman basically is only sandbox mode. Now they do actually have Podman has a feature, their latest, I think of 4.0 Podman, they added a feature where they can read a CIF file, but all it does is unpack into a sandbox before it starts. So it's really not helping you. You still have to, I guess, if you unpack it into another file system, not Lustre. And then there's also the Lustre that's the other issue with having unpacked files on Lustre and any networked file system is that it becomes a big performance bottleneck. So like I said, we didn't have that problem in the high throughput computing, high energy physics world because we used another file system, the CernVM file system, which also did all the metadata operations are done on the client node. And the same way, but the problem with when you use Lustre or network file system like that, all the metadata operations have to go to a metadata server. And when you start up your jobs on hundreds, thousands of nodes all at once, and everyone is reading thousands of files, your metadata server gets really bogged down, if not killed outright. So especially in a Python-based container, which has tens of thousands of files, I think. That's another issue with that. So yeah, so as long as you're using a CIF file on Lustre, it can work. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, and so in fact, we've did some performance. Let me say a little story. That when we released one, or just before, actually, we were about to release 1.1.0, and somebody finally gave us a benchmark that we could run with squash views, and it turned out to be super, super slow. This benchmark, and it's a Python-based benchmark, and it was running on 64 cores, and squash views was single-threaded, and so that kind of killed the performance. But very fortunately, there was already someone had written a multi-threaded squash views patch, and so we turned out when we applied that on this benchmark, it turned out to be almost identical to the kernel squash FS. In fact, measurements showed it to be slightly faster, although I thought it was within the margin of error. But that's really still, we didn't, in that particular test, we didn't compare it against unpacked sandbox on Lustre, but other people have done lots of measurements in the past and showing that's why, in fact, that's, I think, the whole reason why Singularity took off in popularity, became the de facto standard in the first place, is because system administrators found out that it actually performed better than raw files, than raw, software on Lustre. It's because the packed files, the single file system that gets mounted onto the client node moves all those metadata operations over, and so it was actually performing better. So there's been a lot of studies about that in the past.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I see we lost Mr. Godlove again. Oh, he's back.
Maybe I should be back.
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. The only thing it's letting me share now is tabs. All right. So,
with a tab?
Jonathan, Jonathan had a good idea. He suggested, why don't I just point the webcam at the screen? So
I love pixelated visuals here. Let's see what happens.
I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but let me mute and see if I can get a something that'll sort of work.
I could also try to share if you want.
And then it just breaks everything. It's just not day to day. And you're on mute. This is like traveling with kids, Dave. You never know how it's going to go. Could be great, could be a mess.
Well, when it's me, it's pretty much guaranteed to be a mess, right? Where's my? There we go.
Hey, at least we can see Dave's setup.
Can we make Dave's screen bigger? If we all go backstage except for Dave.
Yeah, if we drop all of us and we make Dave big, that's good call.
Wow. All right. I don't know if we want to try to attempt. Can you guys see anything here?
There we go. I don't know if you can still hear us, Dave, but go for it.
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh my gosh. Nah, you're not gonna go.
Yeah, we can see that. That's awesome.
All right. Well, if I do, okay, I'm just going to show you really quick the unprivileged installation, if I can. If I do sudo, who am I? You can see that I'm in trouble. This incident has been reported because I am not a sudoer. Okay. But I do have git. Okay. So what I can do is I'm going to cd here to temp, and I'm going to do git clone https github.com Apptainer. I'm just going to copy the Apptainer Git repo. Directly to my computer here. And now, if I cd into Apptainer and I cd inside of Apptainer to this directory called tools, I don't know if you can see that there, but if I cd there, and then I print what I got, there's this script written by Dr. Dave called install unprivileged.sh. which is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get help off of it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see anything. Let me. So the help is that you run the script, and then you can change the distribution. You can change the arch. This is for the version of Apptainer that you're going to install. You can change the version of Apptainer, and then you give it an install path. So just really quick, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, I'm going to make a directory in which to install this. It's my home directory. I'm going to say Apptainer, and then 1.1.5, which is the version I'm going to be installing. You can change this to whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so I've created that directory, and then I'm going to call that script. I'm going to say I want to install version 1.1.5, and I'm going to give it that location that I just created as the place to install it. Now, what's going on here is actually really cool, because what it's doing is it's downloading RPM packages, and it's extracting those RPM packages. So normally when you're thinking about like RPMs, you're probably thinking about installing things using something like DNF or Yum, which are obviously privileged operations, which you can't do unprivileged. What Dr. Dave has done, and he can correct me if I get this incorrect, is that I think that he has basically said, I'm going to go ahead and just download those RPMs from where they are up on, their repositories, extract them, and manually install them in the directory of your choice as a non-privileged user, which is really cool because you're still using RPMs, right? It's funny that you think this is funny, Zane. So anyhow, it's going ahead and it's extracting these things. Now, I don't know why, but I've noticed that sometimes this takes a little bit longer and sometimes it goes a little bit shorter. This demo is really completely gone belly up today. So I wouldn't expect this to actually complete in a reasonable amount of time. It's probably going to take forever, which, is par for the course today. I haven't had a demo go this badly in a really long time, so I'm overdue. Okay, so it's going to sit there and take its time. Usually this just takes a minute or two, but this time maybe it's going to take a little bit longer. So maybe if you guys want, we could talk about a few other things while this is completing.
We do have another question, Dave, from David. So Dave. So I heard you say this code was coded in Python. If he heard that right, will it run on a Raspberry Pi instance?
No, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
It's not in Python. I talked about a container being made of having Python. That's actually in Go. The main program is Go. This is a Bash script that's hanging right now. I would suggest you just kill that and restart, Dave. Maybe there's a problem with that server. But yeah, right. So it's written in Go. It should certainly run on a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if anybody who did. Now the install, yeah, actually, if you are, even this install unprivileged might work there, depending on what operating system you're running on. It's notice that the you're on what operating system are you on there, Dave? Or is it a Fedora?
Yes, I believe.
I've lost my mouse. I've lost my mouse now, so it takes me a few seconds to unmute. Yeah, like I think my house is going to catch fire next. That's going to be like the only thing that can get worse. But no, I'm actually this is Rocky 9 that I'm running.
It is on a Rocky 9 system. Okay, so it was reading on Rocky 9. So, but the script actually is set up to install. From EL 7, 8, or 9 onto any. Actually, Fedora will also do Fedora. It'll take the native ones. But if you're on Ubuntu or Debian, it's still going to take the corresponding Red Hat EL or Fedora. Actually, it only does Red Hat EL, and then it unpacks unpacks it there. So I see, David, you said in your note that you're running Rocky on PI, so certainly it should just work. It should just work, and it will be a ARM architecture, but that's supported. There's whatever architectures are supported in the by the upstream provider. So yeah, just try it. In fact, Dave showed you doing a git clone of the whole the whole thing. You don't need that. All you need is that one script to install Apptainer.sh, which the instructions and the Apptainer.org documentation, Apptainer.org docs, and the administrator and the administrator guide, the install. It shows you the full path. You just run curl and download that one file and pipe it into Bash, and it will. That's all it takes. Unless there's a glitch in your networking, right, Dave?
Right. So now we've got Apptainer running. So I'm moving a bunch of cords and
scroll back a little bit. We missed it. Can you scroll back a little bit? What did it do? You just started.
Just run it again.
Did it eventually finish?
Yes, it did.
Okay. If you didn't kill it.
So you guys see this?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so I exported the path, Apptainer, 1.1.5 bin path to my path, and then I went ahead and just ran Apptainer like so, and now we've got Apptainer running. In this demo today, I was going to go over building containers and a bunch of other stuff. I don't know how far I'll get, so I've been moving everything around on my desk, and of course I've been pulling on cords and doing this and that, so I've lost now my mouse and my keyboard, and I have to do everything on my laptop. So that's an additional problem here that's going on, but that's cool.
I like the extended reach typing. It's making it better.
Yeah, so we can roll with it. I mean, whatever. We'll do whatever it takes to get it done.
The other thing that this install script does is install all the dependencies, and that's kind of been the motivation for the whole script, is because there are now in 1.1 there's squash fuse you need, there's fuse overlay FS, there's fake root, all these extra commands, which if you're not the system administrator and they're not installed, they're unhandy to get. So this script gets all those dependencies as well from NRPMs and installs all of those.
Okay, and I'm going to run the well-known hello world of Apptainer if I can. So this is just going to prove to you that not only can you run help, but you can actually do stuff. I was going to say useful stuff, but of course this particular container isn't useful at all, except for just verifying that you've got a working installation of Apptainer.
Who built this container, Dave?
Some jerk. I don't know.
It's been around for a while, hasn't it?
It's been around for a long time.
It's awesome.
Okay, so yeah, and this is built by me, so I'm not just calling some random person a jerk. I'm calling myself a jerk. Okay, so yeah, so it works. So unprivileged installation works. If you guys, I'm going to try my best to write a quick little definition file. So I don't know if you guys want to riff a little bit more while I try to do that. But yeah, I'm going to try to write a definition file and just show you that you can actually build unprivileged with an unprivileged installation of Apptainer, which is awesome. Because this basically means that, at this point in time, even if you happen to be on some cluster where the administrators, for whatever reason, they haven't heard of Apptainer or they're suspicious of it, or just, don't want to mess around with containers. They haven't installed it, whatever. You're still not out of luck. You can install Apptainer yourself in your own space on a cluster where you don't have administrative access, and actually even build your own containers on that place where you don't have administrative access. So this is really, really awesome. As long as you have a computer that works, which is kind of,
And as long as it has unprivileged or namespaces enabled.
Yes, and that's an important thing. So thanks for bringing that update. So if you're an administrator and you really, really do not want Apptainer running, don't fret. You can still turn off unprivileged namespaces, and you can still lock things down appropriately. But yeah.
So while Dave does this, if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and shoot them this way. But I'm going to ask. I'll go back to Forrest and Brian because they're being quiet again. Where could you guys see this being useful in things that you're working on right now? Start with Brian this time.
So this is useful in the sense that it helps me prototype, software solutions pretty easily. So in my current work, I'm currently working with OpenFOAM, and currently trying to get that working with EFA, which is like a AWS product. And basically, this has enabled me to quickly rebuild OpenFOAM so that it's compatible with that instance type. And I basically can get it easily running on that. Yeah, pass it on to Forrest.
I basically just take this back to the user perspective. This is going to massively benefit high-performance computing users across the sphere of high-performance computing that are interacting with Apptainer and using it in their workflows. This really, just to bring it back to the theme of our webinar today, power to the users. This gives them a huge amount more flexibility in how they're able to deploy and manage Apptainer within their own research, their own, industry tasks that they're working on. So this is just massively interesting from a user perspective. So as someone who used to, do a lot of direct user support type stuff in the sysadmin-like role, I can see where this just gradually lessens the amount of work that I would have to do to manage this for users, and just gives them ultimately more of the capabilities that they were always looking for around reproducibility and kind of the ability to integrate these within their workflows.
I want to say that actually what motivated me to write this script the most was I distribute a version of or an installation of Apptainer in the CERN VM file system, which is accessible then by anybody who's running CVMFS. And by the way, I should put in a plug for there's something called CVMFS EXEC. This is another one of my tools. You can Google for it. You can run that as an unprivileged user. You can use CVMFS as an unprivileged user, and it also uses unprivileged user namespaces. And you can run it. So CVMFS is a fused file system, but you can run it all unprivileged. So there's a command you can run the CVMFS exec, and then from there run Apptainer, because it's all available inside the CVMFS namespace. And but I wanted to be able to support multiple architectures, because I was starting to get requests for this on PowerPC. And so I want to be able to, okay, well, I don't happen to have a PowerPC machine to compile on, but those things have already been built for Apple. So all I need to do is grab those binaries and install it. So this script, actually, you can install multiple architectures at the same path, the same directory, and it will run whichever ones you've installed based on whichever one your host architecture is when you run it.
That's very cool. Thank you. You ready, Dr. Godlove?
Yeah, as ready as I'll ever be. So I created a very simple little def file, and I'm bound to have made some mistakes in it because of I'm trying to just recapitulate it from memory, and I'm typing behind my back. But I'm going to go ahead and press enter and see what happens here. If I can highlight the screen again. Here we go. All right, so it's starting
to make Dave big again. Sorry, Dave. There we go.
Okay, so it's running kind of slow. So in addition to all the other stuff that I'm probably having some issues with my network. But it's doing a DNF update, and it's doing a DNF install of a bunch of stuff right now, and it's actually installing. So what this tells you is that, I am root inside the container. So once again, just to bear in mind, I have no elevated privileges here, right? But I've been able to install Apptainer, run a container, and build a container with a bunch of DNF commands inside of it, all as an unprivileged user on this system, which is really, really groovy. Yeah, and I'm getting a question to share the def file. So let me... oops. Oh, Vim is not installed. And I can't install it because I'm not privileged. But VI is installed, so never fear. It's not like anything will go wrong. There we go. Very simple. But I've installed Vim. So I've got Vim actually inside the container. I was going to play around with that and show that I didn't have Vim on the host system, but I had it in the container, but you get the idea. installed Python 3, Python 3 pip, and then I installed a little program, a Python program that I like to play around with called ASCII, like ASCII Cinema. A lot of people are probably familiar with it by now. It's been around for a while, but basically it allows you to record ASCII text sessions in your terminal as though they were movies and then play them back as text, which is cool because you can put those things up on websites and things, and then you can like pause them and just copy the commands out of them and run them at your terminal. But I was going to show that a little bit. We don't have any time right now. You can check it out on your own. But yeah. And then if you wanted to run like fake root inside the container, that works too. I don't know if you guys want me to try that real quick or if we're over time already.
Yeah, one more thing, David. Throw it. Try one more.
All right. This is basically, I mean, I was going to go a lot further in this demo and show a lot more stuff, but this is basically the meat of it. The three things I wanted to show. You can install it, you can build containers, and then let me jump in here as fake root really quick and just kind of show you. So, Apptainer. There's the command. I'm moving my hand so you can see it. And then I'm going to jump into test.sif. Okay, I'm in the container as root. I do who am I? It shows me as root. My ID is 0. If I created files, they'd have a UID of 0 here. So now I can do like things like DNF update. I can change things in user local bin or user bin or whatever. I can do all the root stuff.
It's read only though. You have to run it with an overlay if you want to make it writable. Yeah.
Right. In the longer demo, what I was gonna do is I was just gonna dump this out into a sandbox and then jump into it, install some more stuff using DNF. But I mean, we're over time. I think most of the users, hopefully, or most of the viewers actually, get the idea at this point. So sorry that was rocky. Sorry that was a bit of a rocky demo. A different type of rocky demo. But hopefully we were still able to do all the things that we wanted to do here, and you can still we still got it done.
Absolutely. And if we need to, we can come back and try it again later. Yeah, we are up on time, guys. Dave, I really appreciate it. Thanks for fighting through and reorganizing your office. Now I know you can spend the rest of your afternoon trying to get it all put back together. Dr. Dave, it's always good to see you. Thank you very much for being here and for all the information you provide and all the work that you do. We really appreciate it. Thanks to the community for being there as well, for all the off-camera help today. Really appreciate the ideas and the comments and troubleshooting live. Brian Forrest, always good to see you. Thank you for joining. Guys, go ahead and like and subscribe, and we will see you again next week. Thank you.